Okay, so that was a weird YouTube glitch. It just said video recording unavailable. But whatever. The show goes on. Tonight, I figured I'd read Dark Entry number 2 because I didn't have a chance to do it yesterday. And then once that's done, we'll see. Maybe one of Lush Puppy's poems, maybe some E.E. Cummings. Or I could continue reading from Quest for the Relics. Let's see how worn out my voice is. Oh, also, Wifey and I made cocktails with tequila, lemonade, and blueberry compote. And this cup is my most favorite piece of Game of Thrones merch. It says, "I drink and I know things." Which is, one of my favorite quotes by Tyrion Lannister. No, Wicket, you cannot lick this. Aren't kids grand? Dark Entry number 2. All of my calls today were pretty spicy. My first call of the day was a COVID case. An elderly man had died of COVID in an adult care facility, and I was dispatched to bring him back to the mortuary. All calls require wearing a certain level of protective gear. Gloves, face mask. But COVID cases are another story. As soon as I pulled up to the facility, I opened the duffel bag of special PPE that I keep in my work van. I pulled out one of my COVID kits, a bag containing everything I would need to keep myself safe during a COVID call: a hooded bunny suit, shoe covers, a face shield, an N95 mask, thick embalming gloves, and a red biohazard trash bag to dispose of everything once the call is completed. Once I had all my gear on, I took my transport cot into the facility, and the nurses directed me to the room of the deceased. I was by myself on this call, and was relieved to discover that the deceased looked to only be about 150, 160 pounds at the most. I didn't want to be struggling with / touching the body of a person who died of COVID any longer than absolutely necessary. Prep for COVID cases is a bit more involved than prep for standard removals. In my first blog post, I described the process of first lining the transport cot in a plastic shroud. Back at the mortuary, the shroud is wrapped around the deceased and taped into place. However, for COVID cases, we line out cots with 2 shrouds. The COVID-positive deceased is double-bagged and taped up at the scene of the removal for safety. Instead of placing an ID tag on their ankle, we tape it to the outside of their body bag. Once I am at my van with the deceased, I load him up into the back, then immediately remove all my PPE and put it in a red biohazard bag in the back of the van. I applied some hand sanitizer and tried not to think too much about how dangerous my job can be. When I first started this job a little over a month ago, doing COVID removals were a profound source of stress and anxiety for me. It was made very clear before I started that this was going to be something that I would have to do, and at the time I didn't think it would be that bad. It didn't seem like it would be that bad. But when the time came for me to do my first COVID removal, I felt a sense of panic. Like I wanted someone to rescue me from that scary call. It dawned on me that not only was the cavalry not coming to save me, I was the cavalry in this case. That's what I signed up for. For the first time in my life, I've had to learn to be brave, even when it seems terrifying and impossible. I got a call later in the afternoon for a man who had passed away at home. At the time, I just assumed he was an elderly man, but looking back, my text from the office didn't specify an age. My coworker Sarah and I were dispatched to the scene, a trailer park almost an hour away from my office. We drove through winding forest roads deep into the hills, the sky rapidly darkening as a light rain started to fall. I can't chase you right now, the kid. We each pulled our vans into the park and walked up to the front porch of the single wide. It appeared as if the whole family was gathered on the front porch, about 5 or 6 people. Kind of strange considering it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4.5 degrees Celsius at best, and an icy cold rain was falling. On the other hand, some people have an intense fear of being near a deceased person, so strong that they cannot be in the same house, so I didn't think too much of it at the time. A 30-something woman approached Sarah and I, apparently the ambassador of the family, because none of the other relatives spoke a single word to us the entire time we were there. The young woman sensed who we were immediately and walked right over to us. "Hello, we're from the funeral home. Where is a good place to go over some questions with you?" I asked. "Well, we can go inside, but we still don't have power," she said, leading us into a dark living room. The recent storm had caused lots of people to lose power, and many people were still experiencing rolling blackouts. She pulled out a small flashlight. "We've just been using this." Even though the flashlight gave off a weak beam of light, I could see that the living room was bare, as if someone had just moved in or was about to move out. The only things I could see were cat toys, and lots of them. She handed me the flashlight to use. Looking out the window, I noticed a pickup truck with some carpeted cat scratch posts in the back. Sarah led the call, her face illuminated by the light from her tablet. She asked the woman the same routine questions we ask every family. Are you his granddaughter?" "Yes, I am." "Are you the next of kin?" "No, my father is," she said, motioning out the window to a man sitting on the front porch. "But I can answer your questions." "And has the medical examiner been notified?" At this, the woman seemed a bit defensive. "No, but a police officer stopped by and said there was no evidence of foul play." This caught my attention. So far, I had assumed that we were going to be picking up an elderly decedent receiving end-of-life care. It seemed like a strange thing to say about an elderly relative passing. While many families certainly do call the police when their elders die, the mention of foul play seemed odd. "Where is he?" asked Sarah. "This way," said the woman, leading us down the dark hallway. "Hello, Cat." Sarah and I were expecting to be led into a bedroom where the deceased was laying in bed, but instead Sarah and I gasped as my flashlight illuminated a horrific sight. The deceased man was laying on his back on the ground in the hallway, covered in blood. Shining the flashlight on his face, it appeared as if the right side of his head was bashed in. His hands were purple and bloody. Shining my light on the wall behind him, we noticed a large smear of blood, as if someone had frantically finger-painted with blood all over the wall. My heart started beating faster. My instincts were telling me that this was a dangerous place to be, these were dangerous people, and Sarah and I needed to do whatever we could to finish the job and get out of there as soon as possible. "I just found him like this," said the granddaughter, crying. "I found him at about 3 this afternoon. I think he must have fell and hit his head." "Yeah, it looks like it," I said, lying through my teeth. "We're going to go out to our van and get our transport cot. We'll be right back." Taking a quick break. Check the old space, hey? Hmm. Okay. Let's continue. As soon as we were at the van and out of sight of the family, I shot Sarah a look that said, "We need to discuss this later." She nodded. We unloaded her cot and grimly carried it above the snowdrifts. We wheeled it through the dark, empty living room and down the bloody hallway, lowering it all the way to the ground in front of the dead man. Normally, when someone has died on the ground, we will roll them in a sheet, each person gathering up the corners on either end to lift them onto the cot. But this deceased looked small enough that Sarah and I could just each take one end and lift him directly onto the cot, which we did easily. The whole time we were moving him, I had to alternate between holding the flashlight under my chin or trying to fit it under the edge of my hat like a headlamp. We wrapped the dead man up in plastic, but not before Sarah removed a cat toy that we had accidentally picked up along with him. We buckled him up, zipped up the cot. We buckled him up and zipped up the cot cover. After lifting the cot back up and wheeling it into the living room, we asked the granddaughter if she or anyone else would like one last moment with the deceased. She said that she did, so Sarah and I stepped outside. "Oh, Grandpa," the woman sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Grandpa." This went on for several minutes. Like I said before, grief can have a weird effect on people, and different people have different ways of grieving that might seem inappropriate to those who don't understand the grieving process. But this woman's sobbing struck me as over the top and a little performative. Finally, she told us we could take him away. None of the other relatives on the porch came to say goodbye. "Will you bring these to the funeral home?" the granddaughter asked before we left, handing me a small gift bag. "These are his cat's ashes. He always wanted to be cremated and buried with his cat's ashes." "Of course," we told her. "Goodbye, everyone. Take care." "Goodbye," said the granddaughter, crying. Sarah and I loaded the deceased into my van and agreed to meet at the funeral home. Oh, no, the cat wants attention. About 20 minutes later, we each arrived at the funeral home and I backed my van up to the garage. We enter the building, disarm the alarm, then enter and open the garage, where we discover that there is no light. Sarah and I cannot believe it at this point. It's like we were sent on the call from hell. We discussed the crazy situation we were just in and agree that it definitely did not look like this man fell and hit his head. We had propped open the cooler door for light and opened his body bag to have a closer look. Even with the poor lighting, we could tell he had profound head trauma. Perhaps it's possible that he fell. Maybe the family was telling the truth after all. The police officer even said there was no evidence of foul play, allegedly. But I just don't see how an accidental fall could result in such a severe injury with such a large loss of blood. What about the finger painting and blood all over the wall? The family story just didn't add up to me. Sarah and I finished our paperwork, wrapped up the deceased, and put him in the cooler. After we locked up, we each headed back to the office, thoroughly disturbed. I am raising my concerns through the appropriate channels tomorrow. Luckily, the family story still has to pass several more layers of scrutiny. A funeral home staff, funeral director, medical examiner's office, before a death certificate can be signed or before funeral arrangements can proceed. So if there was foul play, justice will very likely be served. I really hope I'm wrong about everything and that I was just being paranoid. I don't know if I added kudos, so I'm gonna do it. And I just added kudos. Cool. Okay, so that's dark entry number 2. I didn't think it was gonna be that short, but I guess I can plunge on. I wanted to read one of Blush Puppy's poems. She's a poetry diary. Let's do the Bone Loan, because I really like it. The Bone Loan. A disc jockey's midnight sleep, standing up like a horse, writing love letters across the face of a tired town. The dream is unfortunately you. I stretch your puppy love out of my bones. But I still want a kiss in the grass, stars all sputtering in our mouths. I'll throw you a bone, babe. The Bone Loan gets an addendum, and then another, and another. The Bone Loan is 4 years long. The Bone Loan is a crooked old tree bearing mouth stars, freshly bankrupt and naked. The bone is a sharp edge, a sudden gasp, a clear wrenching of the seams. The bone lives in a shoebox of its own currency now, a haunted, love-torn fossil next to the radio love letters and the Sally Man picture and the flimsy memory of a disc jockey. Wicket, leave the cat alone. She doesn't want to play with you. To drop a comment there too, that somehow I've never done before. Later. So what did I want to read? Didn't I say something about Quest for the Relics? I'm sure I did. What the hell? Why am I in the Adventure Web drive? Go away. That's not what I wanted. This is the planning sheet. For tonight's last piece, let's do a a story I wrote called Why Do I Need Words? This was done for one of my creative writing classes, short fiction, with Professor Becker, who ended up being my advisor. He's the one who let me know that I could graduate a semester early thanks to the credits I carried over from attempting to be an English teacher. So this is 13 pages, and I can't remember what grade I got. The 3 stories I produced in this class. Why Do I Need Words? Finding That Fire? No, Unrequited was first, then this, and then Finding That Fire. But he didn't really like any of them because he was a pretentious douche. I'll read Finding That Fire another time, and I have to find Unrequited. That's gonna be a trip because I'm pretty sure I wrote it about me in 7th grade. Okay, so why do I need words? Oh, right, and I might have mentioned this before, but this story was inspired by my experience going to Hong Kong and then bonding with wifey and all of that. So, as he left his parents behind after checking in, Jaden felt a wave of excitement and anxiety battle for dominance in his gut. He was going on his first solo flight from Washington, D.C. to Hong Kong. The escalators down to the lower level of Dulles beckoned him. Once below, he would follow the corridors to the airport's internal tram and shuttle system. He'd have to find his way from terminal to terminal and gate to gate from there. A passport to anywhere clutched in his hand, he steeled himself for the journey. The first leg would be a 13-hour-long sojourn to Dubai. I think Becker really didn't like the word sojourn, but fine, I'll change it. I don't know. I never went back and edited this shit, but I probably should. Snacks. He needed snacks as he sat down at his gate. His parents had provided him with some chocolate candy, miniature pears in Ziplocs, some clementines, and some of his mom's homemade rolls. Although he ate 2 clementines and a miniature pear, he felt he needed something more substantial. He got up and got in line at the nearby Dunkin' Donuts kiosk. If y'all hear that clacking in the background, it's Isabella digging at her feeder. A minute or 2 later, his phone began to ring. "Hello?" he answered. It was his dad calling to check on him. "Jaden, how are you? Did you get to the gate okay? Your mother and I are about to leave, so be safe. Don't forget to take your medicine." "Yes, Dad, I'm fine. I took my medicine already. I'm in line at Dunkin' Donuts. I just want some real food before I get on the plane." "Well, I don't think it's a good idea to eat Dunkin' Donuts before such a long flight. It's so greasy." "Now boarding Emirates Flight 282, Washington to Dubai. All passengers please gather at the gate." "Gotta go, Dad. Bye." Jaden hastily ended the call and dashed back to the gate. He didn't want to miss his flight. His gut twisted with anxiety again. He awoke over Emirati airspace. His aisle seat in the center section of the economy cabin made it impossible to glimpse the grandeur of the dazzling city from the air. For sure, he had been awake several times, either watching a movie on the flight's built-in entertainment system mounted in each seat back, or awakening with his stomach snarling in hunger. The food was surprisingly delectable, despite being heated in onboard microwaves. Touchdown was smoother than he expected, too, but the terminal, as fast as it was, funneled him towards a shabby corner where the gate for his connecting flight to Hong Kong awaited. Yet, again, he had managed to get through security, this time on foreign soil. It was late night in Dubai when he arrived. A short layover of 2 or 3 hours separated him from the 7-hour flight to Hong Kong. In this shabby corner, Wi-Fi was a crapshoot. He had to get online and let all his loved ones know that he had arrived safely despite the drastic time zone difference. After wandering for several minutes, he happened upon a Starbucks. Though sleepy and in much need of caffeine jolt, He ignored the line queuing up to order. He didn't know if he could pay in American dollars or if he had to exchange for Emirati currency. His Line app for making international calls was a total failure here because it couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi. How else could he contact his parents? Facebook was the solution. The free Starbucks Wi-Fi with its stronger connection provided the key. I'm here in Dubai trying to wrangle some solid Wi-Fi, he posted as his status. A short, hairy man carrying a heavily laden backpack approached him and asked in heavily accented English, "You're sitting here?" It sounded Russian, but Jaden couldn't tell for certain. He shook his head and moved away, his own heavy-laden backpack swinging behind him. The loose straps flapped up and smacked him in the face. Rubbing at his nose, Jaden grumbled as he retreated to the lounge by the gate. He had never felt so out of place. Not soon enough, the gate opened to admit him, and within he found an even larger sitting area that would permit access to the jetway. He got on the plane, this time a bit disappointed that his seat was cramped by the presence of numerous other people around him. On the previous leg of the journey, he hadn't had any nearby seat companions, and did have his own entertainment system view screen. This time, not so much. Jaden realized he had neglected to take his medicine for this next flight. Of course, he had just sat back down in his assigned seat after visiting the lavatory, having been unable to before the flight. He asked a passing flight attendant if she could bring him a small glass of water so that he could take his pills. Unfortunately, she was distributing hot towels for passengers to refresh themselves with. She just threw him a sidelong glance with a hint of impatient venom. "Apologies, sir. In a moment. I'm passing these out for now." Properly chastened, Jaden leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. Goddamn straw, it's gonna take me forever to drink this. Exhaustion was not close enough a word to describe how he had felt, and the trip was only 2/3 complete. It seemed only a scant few heartbeats later that the attendant returned with his requested water. Jaden smiled gratefully, thanked her, and gulped down his pills. His seatmate, a pretty young woman seemingly around his own age, arrived, babbling in rapid German. Jaden supposed it was German, although much like the chance to encounter with a possibly Russian man in Dubai earlier, he couldn't be entirely sure. In fact, Jaden wasn't sure it was German until he saw 2 or 3 newspapers being read simultaneously by his seatmate's older companion. "Uncle?" Jaden supposed that were all in German. He then noticed that his seatmate was clutching a Penguin edition of A Short History of the English Language Unabridged in her left hand. Jaden himself held a copy of The Mother Tongue, English and How It Got That Way by Bill Bryson. He considered commenting about the similar taste in reading material, but thought better of it. Because of his soft-spoken, mumbling nature, he was often unable to make himself understood even in his native English, and he had no notion of how well his companion could comprehend him, so he didn't even bother. Instead, he surrendered to his travel fatigue and slept. He only awoke to have a meal, snack, or drink. Guess I gotta just keep stirring this. Several days into his stay with his sister Amelia in Hong Kong, his friend Mira messaged him on Facebook. The time difference between Hong Kong and Maryland was pretty drastic, so at first he was confused. It was morning in Hong Kong and nighttime in Baltimore. "Mira, hi! How's China? I bet it's awesome. And you get to see your sister." I actually have a question for you, and you can totally tell me to fuck off if I'm out of line here. Was there any way you could bring me back some loose leaf oolong tea? It's fine if you can't, and of course I'll give you the money for it. It's just that I'm a major tea junkie, and oolong is my absolute favorite. How cool would it be to get it straight from the source? And I'm rambling, sorry. Please have lots of fun visiting and exploring, and I hope to see you when you come back. Jaden, I'll be going into the city today, so I'll look for some, and it's great. Mira, OMG! That would be awesome! And you would totally be my new favorite for at least a week. That's a big deal, lol. Their conversation ended there for the morning/night. Jaden recalled the night they had first met. It had only been a week or so earlier as part of a group outing. Jaden's friend Blaze had arranged a group to meet up to go to a bar and then to Sky Zone, an indoor trampoline park in Timonium. Everyone was to rendezvous at Blaze's apartment in Lambeth House by the campus of Towson University first. Jaden showed up with his neighbor and friend Kat. Kat had been having a rough night and a rough month in general, constantly angsting about having no friends left to rely on except for Jaden. Jaden thought it would do her some good to get out and about, maybe meet some new friends and form a new circle. Hey everyone, this is Kat. She lives across the hall from me, Jaden said by way of introduction. So I was thinking, Jaden continued, maybe we should go eat. I'm hungry. As usual, Kat said, smirking at him. When are you not hungry? Jaden faked a laugh. That's true. Well, Blaze turned around from where he was playing with his dog, Chance. Well, maybe instead of going to a bar first, we could just go to Dunkin' Donuts instead? Who else is hungry? Half of the group raised their hands. There, that'll be cheaper than eating real food at a bar first anyway. Donuts and coffee sound good, Mira interjected, scratching Chance's ears. Works for me. I'm always down for donuts and coffee. Jaden smiled at Mira. Kat poked him on the shoulder. He was startled and turned to talk to her. Meanwhile, everyone else agreed they should all be hyped up on caffeine and sugar before going trampolining. Physics would vehemently disagree with their original idea of drinking alcohol before jumping. Even with plans rearranged and decided upon, they still didn't leave. Everyone but Jaden and Mira were having too much fun, admiring and playing with Chance. Mira went to go sit next to Jaden on the couch facing the TV, but Blaze got there first and started talking to him about the video game Diablo 3, which Jaden had traded to him. Kat caught Mira looking at him, and every time she looked, Kat touched Jaden somehow, stroking his arm, playing with his hair, or touching his thigh. It was as though she was claiming him. Jaden was too engrossed in his animated conversation with Blaze about killing monsters with swords and magic spells to notice this territory marking. He was oblivious in general, but Mira wasn't to know this yet. 20 minutes later, they finally all broke up into carpool groups to go to Dunkin' Donuts. Jaden, Kat, and Mira ended up in Lily's minivan. Mira introduced Jaden and Kat to French Toast, Lily's giant panda plushie from Squishable. Jaden made incoherent exclamations of glee, while Kat pretty much just glared. He only stopped squeezing French Toast when they had arrived at their destination, and he was loath to put it down. You're not taking that inside, Jay, Kat said, unable to suppress a laugh. It'll look stupid. Jaden muttered at her that she looked stupid, but not loudly enough for her to hear. They spotted and regrouped with the others who had come in another car before going in and ordering a round of iced coffees and a dozen assorted donuts. Jaden snatched up the first Boston cream he saw and stuffed it into his mouth. While waiting for his Rocky Road iced coffee, Jaden noticed that Mira was sitting quietly at one of the tables, scrolling through her phone. Upon a closer look, he discovered that Mira was on Tumblr. So how many posts do you have? He asked her. Oh, only around 5,000 or so. I'm not on there that often. What about you? Jaden had to think for a solid minute or two before he could remember. About 79,000. Yeah, I tend to spend too much time on there. She laughed and he laughed too. It felt good to laugh, comfortable. Neither of them was all that good around new people, generally speaking. While everyone else finished munching donuts, Jaden and Mira were the only ones with coffee left. Soon after, the group arrived at Sky Zone and the two of them approached the counter together. You've got to sign the liability waivers first, said the woman at the counter, pointing to a cluster of computer screens across from the counter. But we just wanted to know how much tickets cost, Jaden protested. Again, the woman only pointed, this time jabbing her finger more insistently. Mira took his arm and pulled him away before he could get any more heated. They rejoined the... Oh dear, the Instant Pot is beeping. They rejoined the rest of the group, who were debating what to do instead of Sky Zone. The others had ascertained that the next available start time was at 11, and the coupon for $15 for 2 hours of jump time wouldn't be worth it if there's only 1 hour left until the place closed at midnight. Why don't we go to the Still? Blaze suggested. The Still was an Irish pub nearby, also in Timonium, right across from the Maryland State Fairgrounds. The group decided that they should go there instead. They could always come back to Sky Zone on another night, perhaps was when it wasn't as packed as it frequently was on Saturdays. Despite the fact that Kat had inserted herself between them in the loud and crowded place, Mira and Jaden still managed to order the same cocktail, the Sin Apple Martini. Everyone else ordered something else, either beers like Blue Moon or margaritas. As oblivious as he often was, even Jaden realized that this couldn't be mere coincidence. Have you tried it yet? Jaden yelled across the table. She nodded. It's really sour, she yelled back. It was so loud in the pub he doubted anyone else in the group would be able to hear them, except for Kat, who was pouting quite obviously because she wasn't getting enough attention. Jaden tended to lead an invisible life, content to hide in the background until given the chance to occasionally show off. He was the most extroverted introvert he knew, and the most pessimistic optimist he knew, and yet he didn't seem to know what else to say. Mira smiled at him. What would it be like to kiss her? They had only just met earlier that night. Would that be out of line? Jaden lived in fear of violating common courtesy. He so rarely picked up on social cues, after all. Jaden ordered food for himself and Kat. They shared a bacon cheeseburger and sweet potato fries to go with their chosen drinks. His Sin Apple Martini wasn't only sour, it was also strong, with notes of lemon and lime to go with the cinnamon and green apple. When he had finished it, Jaden did his level best to resist the urge to drink from Mira's. When the group had finished and paid, they headed outside into the brisk cold. It was a drafty, rainy night, with the winds coming and going as they damn well pleased. Jaden needed a smoke to soothe his jangled nerves, but he knew better than to ask. Nobody in his circle regularly smoked cigarettes enough to carry a pack and a lighter with them whenever and wherever they were out someplace. Excuse me. Jaden himself was only ever a social smoker. His dad had been a habitual smoker before giving it up 12 years ago. Besides, Jaden preferred the taste of hookah, more specifically mango shisha, to filtered chemical rolls. Either way, but tonight called for cigarettes. Even better would have been a finger or two spliffs. If nicotine couldn't settle him down, maybe cannabis and tobacco mixed together could. And yet he knew those hazy days were behind him, which made it such a godsend when Mira pulled out her vapor pen, a vape out of her pocket, and offered him a pull on it. Mother's milk, she said, smiling enigmatically. It sounded like a non sequitur until she followed up, strawberries and cream, the best flavor that there is. Her vape's battery was a shiny purple cylinder with a black rose design etched on the tank. The large silver tank had a metal cage around the glass component and an intricate pane of diamonds. An airflow adjuster connected the battery to the tank. Jaden cautiously lifted the narrow mouthpiece to his lips, unsure how this was going to work. Press button, inhale, receive smoke, Mira instructed him. He took a long draw and almost at once convulsed with violent coughing that pushed what little smoke he had gathered out of his throat again. He shoved the vape back into Mira's right hand while with her other hand she attempted to lessen his resemblance to half a dragon. Smaug, the great and terrible, the fearsome and magnificent. If only he hoarded pens instead of gold. A majestic lightning bolt seared across the sky, swiftly followed by a boom loud enough to shake their eyeballs and batter their eardrums. The look on Kat's face at the sight of Mira touching Jaden matched the building storm. "Time to go home, I think," Blaze said. "Back to Lambeth? We can play Cards Against Humanity." No one else could raise any complaints or arguments, so off they went. Once back at Lambeth, they gathered in a circle on the floor to start playing. Their game proceeded for about 2 hours before Jaden declared he should head back to his own place in Towson University's West Village across the street. The game started to break up as people decided to head home. It was past 1 in the morning and the night only grew older. By this point, after one round of the game, Blaze had shuffled off the bed and was dead to the world, despite the noise of laughter smattered with profanity emanating from the living room. Before Jaden left, he went around the room and hugged everyone, and Mira held on the longest. Kat hugged everyone else except for Mira. She reserved a glare of daggers for Mira before she took Jaden by the hand and flounced towards the door, too petite a frame and stature to impressively stomp off in intimidating fashion. That had been the last time Jaden had seen Mira. Jaden gazed blearily out the airplane window as DC once again materialized into view from beneath a swatch of misty morning clouds. His trip to Hong Kong had been a humid and tiring week of running around the city and spending late nights instant messaging with Mira. Once the plane was safely on the ground, Jaden made it his first priority to get in touch with his parents to let them know he had arrived alive, if not in high spirits. He was too worn out to be in good spirits. But despite calling both their cell phones multiple times, he got no answer. While queuing in the line to go back through Gate 16 towards the main international arrivals terminal, Jaden tried calling Blaze. Also with no success. It was like he was still trapped in his own personal bubble, through which neither Wi-Fi nor mobile signal could penetrate. On the shuttle, he grabbed hold of a pole, unwilling to sit down after having just been through a 20-hour plane trip. He clutched his phone as he called Mira. He had gotten her number before leaving Blaze's place the night they had met. "Hey, I'm home. Now I just got to tell my parents so they don't think I'm dead." "Ah, yeah, that would be a good idea. I like you, so I'm glad you're not dead." Still smiling as he got off the shuttle, Jaden almost didn't notice the table full of forms and paperwork that loomed in front of him before he could clear immigration. Sighing, he paused to take a deep breath before he bypassed the forms and went to the passport scanner. With the scan printout in hand, he approached the agent at the desk. "Where are you coming from abroad?" the agent asked. "Just Hong Kong via Dubai and the UAE, Jaden answered, breathless again. Doing so much walking with a heavy backpack made him feel asthmatic, and he hadn't even retrieved his luggage yet. "Just those 2 places?" The agent eyed him sternly. "Yes," Jaden repeated, holding out his hand for his passport. "Okay, go on through then." "Thank you," Jaden said. As he approached the carousel, his phone rang again. He noticed that his dad was calling, yet again, this time from his work cell phone. "Jaden, where are you? Have you gotten your luggage yet?" "No, Dad. I just cleared immigration, and I have to wait for the luggage to show up. I haven't seen it yet." "Okay, just call me again once you're ready. Your mother and I are waiting for you outside." It took 10 minutes, but Jaden finally recovered both pieces of his luggage. huffing and grumbling under his breath as he headed for the exit that would take him out towards the exterior of the airport. Following a mix-up misunderstanding with another immigration agent about forms, he eventually figured out the other agent wanted to check the slip the first agent had put inside his passport when he cleared the first checkpoint. Once in the airport's atrium, he found his parents, who immediately pelted him with questions about how the trip went. Exhausted, Jaden could only offer the scantest of details. He needed a hot bowl of soup and a hotter shower to shake off the fog of grogginess enveloping him. Mira texted him about dog sitting with her, but Jaden answered he'd be out of luck, because he had no car on campus once his parents dropped him off. Besides, they were swinging home first so Jaden could collect things for school that he hadn't needed for his week-long stay in Hong Kong. But later that night, Mira came over to see Jaden. She got dropped off by Lily after dog sitting was done. Jaden couldn't have been more jittery if he had just ingested coffee made with Red Bull. Proclaiming loudly he needed something to drink, Jaden swept into the apartment's kitchen and mixed up a concoction he called a Captain Jameson. Captain Morgan spiced rum on the bottom, Jameson Irish whiskey in the middle, and about 2 gulps worth of Dr. Pepper on top. By the time Jaden downed the drink, he was feeling calmer but also dizzy. Drinking too fast had given him one mean head rush. Speaking of drinking too fast, I wish I'd gotten a different straw. Back in Jaden's bedroom, Mira curled up on his bed. Then she sat up and leaned against the end wall under the Justice League poster that Jaden had hung there. Haltingly, she admitted that Blaze and Lily had both encouraged her to see him that night, even though she had felt so overwhelmed all she had wanted to do was hide in bed for the rest of the evening. When I said I liked you, I really meant it. I've had a crush on you since I knew you existed, and looking you up on Facebook made me fall even harder for you. So, what do you think? Am I scaring the shit out of you yet? You can run screaming for the door. I won't blame you. Just tell me how you feel about me first, please. Jaden tried to stay upright despite being floored by Mira's confession. He took a deep breath and looked out the window to the evening sky beyond. Then he turned around again and approached Mira. She shrank away with a quiet meep as he did, but then relaxed when he put a hand on her cheek and gently caressed it. Just before he leaned in towards her, she exhaled again. Why do I need words? He responded, and Jaden smiled as he finally kissed her for the first time. That's the end of my story. Hope you guys really liked it, because my grad school professor didn't, but I mean, like I said, that dude was a twat waffle. So, yeah, I'm gonna cut it here, upload, go get my ass in bed with some ice cream. That's the rest of my night. I'll be watching Slapped Ham and then maybe something on Hulu or Amazon Prime or whatnot. Something besides Netflix.